I will ask every single one of you to just be real patient, maybe just chant Marty until we get it going again. All right. Okay, so just real quick, so Colonel Marty France is the head of astronautics at the U.S. Air Force Academy down in the Colorado Springs. For those of you who don't know him, yeah, pretty badass. His credits are sound. He was once here talking about orbits, and he said, quote unquote, "My favorite orbit is," and it was the cutest thing, because it was very genuine, and he has a favorite orbit. And now he's going to talk about rockets. So here's Mark Prince.
Well, first off, thanks a lot, Sarah. I think this is the first time an Air Force colonel has ever called to talk about polyamory. Yeah, I don't know. We'll talk. But anyway, I'd like to thank Sarah for asking me back with giving a talk between polyamory and the sex of fruit flies. You can probably just consider me your intellectual cigarette break, I guess. But the two things that brought me back were really when I was really nervous last time. I'm really nervous now too, but last time I was really nervous, and when I got done I went back and my wife actually gave me a kiss, which when we've been married this long is code for "you weren't an idiot." Which is, you know, it's a low baseline, but I mean it sometimes. And then Sarah shared some anonymous, or at least kept the names away from me, which is good, messages that were sent during the talk, and sent her some more. But first one was a request for a talk on interplanetary trajectories, which I know all of you are here for. And then and the second one was some misguided person who said they wanted to have a rocket science baby. Which, right now, it's physically impossible, so I'm sorry about that. I already have 3 rocket scientist grandsons. I'm not old. Yeah, and they're working their way through differential equations, but they'll get there soon. And, but she also mentioned something about wanting to go to Mars with me just to listen to me talk all the way there. We're going to talk about that trip tonight, and why that's probably a really bad idea. But for me, when you're 57 years old, and I just turned 57 last Sunday, when you're 57 years old, getting messages like that are pretty much the equivalent of 25-year-old scotch with a Viagra chaser. Something I forgot last time, I've got to give a disclaimer statement. Yeah, I'm a colonel in the Air Force, but and public affairs knows that I'm here. They don't know who I followed and follows me in the studio. Didn't share that with them, but everything I say here tonight is not official. It's not the views of the Air Force. It's not the views of the Academy, the government, anyone I work for. It's just me. Okay? I didn't say that last time. So, anyway, let's get on with it. Tonight we're going to talk about interplanetary trajectories. Again, how many were here for my last talk? Great. So this should go pretty quickly. To quote John Oliver, we have just enough time for a quick recap of last time's events. And so hang with me. We're going to move very quickly so we have time for questions. Last time, what did we cover? That the Earth is not flat, even in Colorado Springs. Also, that to get into orbit, we've got to get very high, and that means altitude. We have to clarify that on 421. And we have to get going very fast. About how fast to get in the lowest third of orbit, any of my fans remember? About 17,500 miles an hour. And then once we do that, when we get up there high enough above the atmosphere, to get there, I forgot that one. That's the equivalent of being in a Tesla S and accelerating faster than its max acceleration for about 8 straight minutes to get going that fast. But once we do get into orbit, then we can do a variety of different things to accomplish missions that are important to just about everyone here in the room. And yeah, my favorite orbit is that one, highly elliptical. It's very eccentric. Okay, so interplanetary missions. Sorry, Buford. we had some technical problems, so this isn't my computer, and a few things may go wrong. But that's why there's beer. Interplanetary missions. By the time we're done tonight, this should seem intuitively obvious even to the most casual observer. Oh, there it is in English, in case you didn't know the je peux faire la même chose en français, mais ce soir je le ferai en anglais. Okay. So, there's our interplanetary mission. And when we talk about going interplanetary, rocket scientists talk for what we need to do to get there. We use the term delta V. Any rocket that's going to put us into interplanetary trajectory, put us into orbit, we always talk, well, hey, what's delta V? And delta V means, hey, how much change in velocity do I need to provide to get something done? We said earlier that to get into orbit, we have to go 17,500 miles an hour. To start at ground level and get up there, we need that's about 7.5 kilometers per second, but we need about 8 or 9 kilometers per second of delta V to get into orbit. If I'm going to go out to where the DirecTV satellites are, that might be like 12 and a half, something like that. And so we use big rockets to do that. They've got strap-on boosters, so strap-ons are big in the rocket business. They're solid rocket motors. And they usually have a couple of stages, and then there's our payload up at the top. Obviously, men design most rockets. What would a rocket look like if a woman designed it? I'm not sure. Okay. Missile silos? Okay. Let's keep moving right along. I've got a professional obligation to show an equation. So if you suffer from some math PTSD, you're just cover your eyes. This is the rocket equation. I have a favorite orbit. This is like my favorite equation. It's derived from Newton's second law, conservation of momentum. It says that my delta V is equal to the effective exhaust velocity of my rocket. How fast is the stuff coming out the back? Times the natural log. Okay, natural log, not meaning wood or other things, of the mass ratio. Natural log is scientists talk for the compound interest rate, kind of. Okay? So that's also equal to what we call the specific impulse, or the efficiency of my rocket, times 9.81 meters per second squared, natural log ratio. That mass ratio means that's the ratio, or my initial mass on the pad, with everything on board, all the oxygen, all the hydrogen, all the other stuff, divided by how much I weigh, or my mass, when I've burned all of my fuel. And what it really tells me is the faster I go faster, which is cool. And if I add stages, all I've got to do is add up those delta V's, and it works. This was developed by a guy in the 1890s by the name of Konstantin Tsiolkovsky. That's his statue. I mean, you gotta love the Russians because they like their scientists. I mean, you got Einstein in DC, but there aren't too many people that develop an equation. And Gagarin's statue is back here, Yuri Gagarin, and here's Tsiolkovsky. And so I took this picture in Moscow a few years ago, really liked it. Here's Konstantin again, showing off one of his less successful experiments, the earwax rocket. Give you an example. Okay, I'll show that again. I gave this talk to my cadets this morning, and of course they loved it, but they always do. But they didn't really like the earwax rocket joke. A cadet actually told me, Colonel Francis, it'd be a better joke if you put flames coming out. You're going to be a general someday, boy. So if I apply the rocket equation to a Saturn V going to the moon, and these are real numbers, putting up an awful lot of payload into a translunar orbit, I'm going to, and I know some of you are already whipping out the calculators, but if I do that equation, I'm going to come up with about 11.7 kilometers per second, and we're going to get going a lot faster than that, hopefully here tonight. Once I get going really fast with that rocket, then I can go into orbits that give me lots of different possibilities. Oh no. Oh, this isn't good. Sarah. These Greek letters that's making Okay, that was actually something that moved around. Those of you who were here last time, remember I had the conic section animation that showed all the plane moving through the cones, and everyone that wasn't drunk was really kind of mesmerized by it. And so then we all had a drink. We'll move along. But when I get up into space, I've got different opportunities. If I'm not going fast enough, I hit the Earth and I'm in ICBM. If I have just enough to get around, I'm in a circular orbit. And you can think of this kind of like growing up, okay? You know, you can't get away from the house. Well, hey, I can go to college, but I'm coming back next year. And then I got a part-time job that I get out a little bit, but I still have to come back and get food and laundry. So I got a little bit more energy and a little bit more money. And then I finally achieve escape velocity. Okay? That's when your parents breathe a huge sigh of relief. But the problem with escape velocity is you're leaving, but you're really not going anywhere. So it's like that first job. You're working in an enterprise rental car or something like that. What we're looking for is these unbound orbits with a high-speed launch. We're on a hyperbolic trajectory. And so now we're going to go off into deep space. We're going to leave the Earth. We have enough energy to get out of the basement, the gravitational basement. And now we're heading off into deep space. But the problem is we're out in the void of space. And if we don't time this right, if we're not heading in the same direction, we're really just floating around there in the solar system in interplanetary space. And in the void of space, we can just be subject to, you know, a big giant ball of steaming orange gas that spews noxious fumes and has a strange attraction that we call gravity. And that's the sun. That causes a lot of problems for me, yeah. Worries me too. Put on my thin underwear. So anyway, here's the sun. And I was really kind of happy that we had the polyamories talk, and I really enjoyed it. It was a great talk because I actually drew some analogies to astronautics. The interesting thing in astronautics, we talked about this last time. Hey, I'm a rocket scientist. I have to do this, okay? I live in metaphors. So what we do to solve this problem is we do something we call the patched conic approximation. Rocket scientists are really good monogamous mates. Next month it'll be 35 years for me, because this is the equation that governs our orbits. And the thing about it is we call it the two-body equation. I'm serious. We call it the two-body equation, and every good astronautical engineer knows that I can calculate wonderful paths and elegant orbits for a two-body problem. But the three-body problem has no fixed solution at all. You can't solve it. I have no problem solving the two-body problem. The three-body problem, I can't do it. So we kind of take the route, it's somewhat polyamorous in the sense that the patched conic approximation, what we decide to do is, instead of saying, hey, I got one big gravitational ball here and one here and one here, I can't solve that. So I'm going to break it up into three relationships of two each. So I guess you could say Mars and the Moon are metamors or paramors. I need to do research. So we're going to go here. We're going to talk about one part of this is the trajectory from one orbit to the next. And then once we figure that out, I'm going to do a hyperbolic departure from the Earth. And then I'm going to use this same equation to do a hyperbolic arrival at Mars. Okay, so let me give you a metaphor for how that works. Let's say we're the Rockies and we're going to a Nationals game. Baseball, polyamory, we can do all of this, okay? In my first step, all I care about is the map of Denver. I'm leaving downtown Denver and I'm going to Denver International on the bus. We get on the plane. Okay, we can do that. That's my metaphor. That's fine. Actually, I like that one because it's kind of like it's a nice orbit, and I don't have starts and stops, or not too many of them at least, because starts and stops really don't work well for us. I get to the airport, we get on board the plane, we taxi, we take off, and then we get going to a high enough speed that we can get on the Interplanetary highway, okay? Which is like merging onto a specific direction and velocity, getting on the merge lane. Now, I realize for Colorado drivers, that's kind of challenging because most of you would get to right here, slam on the brakes, and look for asteroids over your left shoulder before speeding up again. I'm from Arizona. I can make fun of you. But then once I'm on that pathway, now I can forget about the map of Denver completely. I'm in a totally new reference frame, and now, and this is about the limit of my full kernel PowerPoint skills. Yeah, the lieutenant would barely be promoted for that. For me, I'll probably be a general. But now I care about just the path to DC. I care about the air traffic controllers telling me where to go. That's my frame of reference. It's like the path from Earth to Mars. Once I get to Mars or Washington, D.C., then I can land, and now I've got a whole new frame of reference, and this is my third patch conic. And now I'll land at Reagan Airport, I'll take the yellow line, I'll transfer here, go to the green line, and I'll hit Nats Park right there. Okay? So what does that look like? Hey, I've left the Earth, I've gone on a transfer, I'm on my way to Mars, and when I get to Mars, I'm going to be moving really fast, and I actually have to slow down relative to Mars so I can get to Mars. So everyone likes moving videos on this, and I'm glad this one worked so I can take a drink. But Mars is moving slower than Earth. This is not to scale. I gotta tell people this sometimes, okay? And the deal is that at its closest approach, Mars and Earth are only about 34 million miles apart. At their furthest point, they're 221 million miles apart. The Earth is moving at about 50,000 miles an hour, almost 30 kilometers per second around the sun. Mars is moving at about 30,000 miles an hour. And that's the path I'm ultimately going to have to take between the two if I want to get there in minimum energy. Okay? And I can't just blast off from here and go here, because again, that's moving 30,000 miles an hour. And, you know, I can't just line it up here and, you know, go over here and go through the sun, even if it's night. In fact, I'm going to take a moment transfer. This is my minimum energy way to go. And for the sad young lady who wants to go to Mars with me, that route is 259 days of joy. My wife's laughing so hard about that. Okay. And in fact, what I really have to do is I've got to wait until it all lines up. And so the Earth has to be here, Mars has to be here, relatively. And if I do that, then there's human PowerPoint skills. I got to rendezvous now at Mars, okay? But the problem is, if I go backward here, how often do these two planets line up just right that I can do this transfer? Beer fountain, there. Sorry. Rarely is true. Every 780 days, they only line up every 2 years. So when you're watching The Martian and they said, sorry, no help for 2.5 years, that's optimistic. Okay? So here we go, let's do that again. Ooh. Was it good for you? There are some other options, okay? And for example, I can do what's called a long stay fast transit. I can use a more powerful rocket and get to Mars here, but then I've got to stay on Mars for 619 days until things line up and I can come back. I can do a conjunction class mission, a little bit different. Get to Mars, and you see the days here. The point is, even to our nearest or most friendly neighbor, it's a long trip. This one, 220 days out, but if I want to catch the right bus, I can only stay 30 days. And we're not going to spend, 2.5 trillion for 30 days. Okay? So, in walks Buzz Aldrin, a handsome Air Force colonel. I like that. Okay? Second man on the moon. And any of you have seen the video, absolute puncher of conspiracy theorists as well. And Buzz, when he was doing his, in his spare time, which we call PhD dissertation, he came up with something we call the Aldrin cycle. And if we go to Mars on a routine basis, it's going to be on an Aldrin cycle. He said, if I come up with an elliptical orbit around the sun that looks like this, it's going to intersect the Martian orbit in 2 places, the Earth orbit in 2 places, and I can set this whole thing up, and I sure hope this next GIF works because it's really sweet. And I can set it up almost like scheduled train service. Another way to think about this one would be, back in the day when we had sailing ships, they came from Europe to the New World on the trade winds at low latitudes, and then they went up north in a clockwise cycle around the North Atlantic. And they had to depend on the winds to do that. But we'd have to depend on orbits to do this. Come on, yes. Okay, so this is what it looks like. Here's Mark Watney. Okay, and ooh, look, so we get to the Earth. Okay, we get to the Earth, and now bang, we hit Mars. And we'll come around, we'll do this again, but if I set up 4 or 5 of these, then I can have regularly scheduled service to Mars. It'll take a lot of money, but this is the way we're ultimately going to establish a long-term presence in Mars. Okay, so let's go interplanetary beyond Mars now. And here's New Horizons. Let's talk about what we need to do to get there. And this is really the fun part. Okay, first, we need a really, really big rocket. This is the New Horizons launch that sent the spacecraft to Pluto. When it left the Earth, it was the fastest ever man-made object. It left the Earth, relative to the Earth, at about 16 kilometers per second. About 40,000 miles an hour relative to the Earth. Which is, if you put it in terms of relative to the Sun, 100,000 miles an hour. Okay? And we did that because we had a Bravo Alpha rocket, big-ass rocket, with strap-ons. I'm trying to use the technical terms. I don't want to dumb it down. So we had big strap-ons, we had a special upper stage, and this whole rocket, it looks like a giant rocket, right? This is a thing that we launched direct TV satellites that weigh 5,000 pounds. New Horizons was right up there and weighed only 450 kilos, 1,000 pounds. So that's why if you go back to that rocket equation, this thing was probably about 1.5 million pounds on the pad. If you do the rocket equation, I only had about 450 kilos in the end. Okay? And we get there by doing something called a gravity assist. Okay? And we had to do this even with New Horizons. New Horizons was the first vehicle ever launched into a trajectory that could fully escape the Earth's, the solar system without any assistance. But it's still got a little bit of a boost at Jupiter. I could watch this for a while. So watch this. And what we're saying here is that as I come near another gravitational body in the planet frame down there at the bottom, it just looks like I'm going around the corner. Think about it like you're running down a trail of switchbacks. Any 14er climbers here coming down switchback trails, on the bar trail on Pikes Peak, and you got those poles at the switchbacks, and you're running down and you grab the pole and it changes your direction for you? You've done that. Okay, yeah, I'll practice it on a street lamp or something. If we now look at gravitational slingshots, it's just like if that pole was moving as you went past it, and it would drag you along. And that's when New Horizons went past Jupiter, it went just behind Jupiter. Jupiter's gravity turned it, and New Horizons actually stole a little bit of Jupiter's momentum and continued on to Pluto. Another way to think of it is, if I throw a ball at a train coming towards me, it's going to bounce off a lot faster. If I hit a baseball with a bat, it's going to go away from the bat faster than the pitcher threw it. Okay? If I hit the backside of the bat, if I bunt or if I hit the backside of the train here, it will slow me down. So if I go on the correct side of the planet, I can gain some velocity. And this is what New Horizons did. It took off from the Earth at 100,000 miles an hour with the sun's gravity bending it. When it got to Jupiter's orbit, and that's Jupiter's orbit, this is actually this morning's update on New Horizons. You can find this online. Jupiter's now over here. It went past Jupiter. It went on the backside of Jupiter. Jupiter sped it up. It had slowed down so much that now when it went past Jupiter, now it's going 50,000 miles an hour towards Pluto. Gets to Pluto, does another gravity-assisted Pluto, heading out to KBO 2014, Kuiper Belt object, discovered in 2014, coded MU69. So it's going to be seeing some other things out there soon. And that's New Horizons. Okay. Developed by NASA and the Applied Physics Laboratory at Johns Hopkins University. So here's the top-down view of the same thing. Left the Earth, and these units, those are Earth orbit radii. So that means right now, this morning, New Horizons was 35 times further away from the sun than the Earth is. Just passing Pluto last July. And this is where all the planets are. And you can see why Pluto's not a planet. It doesn't really fit the mold. It comes inside Neptune. It's too close to Uranus. Sorry, I couldn't resist that one. Everyone loves a good Uranus joke. The master of this was Voyager, and of course, all the old people here know what Voyager is. Launched around my, I was 18. And this is, I'm sure most of you see that this is a real problem. It did not go inside the Earth's orbit. That's wrong. It really went outside. But it lined up to do a grand tour and did gravity assists on all of the planets. Voyager 1 and 2. When Voyager 2 left Neptune, it was actually moving faster than New Horizons is currently traveling. And even at its speed of over about 30,000 miles an hour, it'll take it about 70,000 years to reach our nearest star. Okay, here's Cassini, and this is, now things get complicated. Lots of times, I think astro engineers sit around and it's kind of like a game of horse. Okay, so I want to get to Saturn, and I need to be there in 2004. I think I can get there by, let's see, launching, going out pretty wide, and then I'm going to swing by Venus, I'm going to swing by Earth, I'll go by Venus again, it'll send me out to Jupiter, then I'll swing out to Saturn, and you try to hit the shot. Okay? And then once you get to Saturn, you got lots of moons, and this is the really polyamory problem where I've got only a really big mass in the middle, and then I've got all these little distractions called moons and rings that keep, making me stray off into weird orbits. So wait, oh, my other video didn't work. Boo. Okay. Anyway, I had a video of, since we had to switch computers, it didn't really come out. Oh wait, here it is. Let's see. Oh, that's not. Come on. Sarah. Okay. I think if I, not running. Okay, well anyway, there's a great video out there. We'll just stop and answer questions out. It shows Rosetta in its 12-year mission to intercept the comet. And it does 2 passes of Earth, 1 pass of Mars, goes past the meteor, and There's lots of cool things. So anyway, that's interplanetary travel. We've got to go real fast. We've got friends along the way that can help us called other planets. But ultimately, it takes a lot of money, a lot of time, and a lot of energy, and a lot of smart people to do this. So anyway, I want to leave time for questions. Thank you. Really loud. Questions? Okay, I can't see anything. So.
Yeah. What's cooler, the SpaceX landing or the Aerojet meeting the NASA did today?
You got me because I didn't know that Aerojet won the NASA did today. I'm a big SpaceX fan. They destroyed my first satellite when I was